Chapter 18 of Uncle Wiggily and Old Mother Hubbard. Uncle Wiggily and the Second Kitten.
"Well, where are you going now, Uncle Wiggily?"
asked Nurse Jane Fuzzy Wuzzy, the muskrat lady housekeeper of the rabbit gentleman, one day as she saw him starting out of his hollow stump bungalow after he had found the first of the little kittens who had soiled their mittens.
"I am going to look for the second little lost kitten,"
replied the bunny uncle, "though where she may be I don't know. Her name is Muzzo."
"Why, her name is almost like mine, isn't it?"
asked Nurse Jane Fuzzy Wuzzy.
"A little like it,"
said Uncle Wiggily.
"Poor little Muzzo. She and the other two kittens ran off after they had soiled their mittens, eating cherry pie when their mother, Mrs. Purr, was not at home."
"It is very good of you to go looking for them," said Nurse Jane.
"Oh, I just love to do things like that," spoke the rabbit gentleman. "Well, goodbye. I'll see if I can't find the second kitten now."
Away started the rabbit gentleman, over the fields and through the woods, looking on all sides for the second lost kitten, whose name was Muzzo.
"Where are you, kitty?" called Uncle Wiggily. "Where are you, Muzzo? Come to me. Never mind if your mittens are soiled by cherry pie juice. I'll find a way to clean them."
But no Muzzo answered. Uncle Wiggily looked everywhere, under bushes and in the tree tops, for sometimes kitty cats climb trees, you know, but no Muzzo could he find. Then Uncle Wiggily walked a little farther and he saw Billy Wagtail, the goat boy, butting his head in a snowbank.
"What are you doing, Billy?"
asked the rabbit gentleman.
"Oh, just having some fun,"
answered Billy, standing up on his hind legs.
"You haven't seen a little lost kitten with cherry pie juice on her new mittens, have you?" asked the rabbit gentleman.
"No, I'm sorry to say I have not,"
said Billy politely.
"Did you lose one?"
"No, she lost herself,"
said Uncle Wiggily, and he told about Muzzo.
"I'll help you look for her,"
offered the goat boy, so he and Uncle Wiggily started off together to try to find poor little lost Muzzo and bring her home to her mother, Mrs. Purr. Pretty soon, as the rabbit gentleman and the goat boy were walking along, they heard a little mewing cry behind a pile of snow, and Uncle Wiggily said,
"That sounds like Muzzo now."
"Perhaps it is. Let's look," said Billy Wagtail. He and the bunny uncle looked over the pile of snow, and there, surely enough, they saw a little white pussy cat sitting on a stone, looking at her mittens, which were all covered with red pie juice.
"Oh, dear," the little pussy was saying. "I don't know how to get them clean. What shall I do? I can't go home with my mittens all soiled, or my mamma will whip me."
Of course, Mrs. Purr, the cat lady, would not do anything like that, but Muzzo thought she would.
"What are you trying to do to clean your mittens, Muzzo?" asked Uncle Wiggily.
"Oh, how you surprise me!" exclaimed the second little lost kitten. "I did not know you were here."
"Billy Wagtail and I came to look for you," said Uncle Wiggily. "But what about your mittens?"
"Oh, I've been dipping them in snow, trying to clean them," said Muzzo. "Only the pie juice will not come out."
"Of course not," spoke Uncle Wiggily with a laugh. "It needs hot soap suds and water to clean them. You come home to my bungalow and we will get some."
"Oh, I am so cold and tired I can't go another step," said the second little kitten, who had run away from home after she soiled her mittens. "I just can't."
"Well, then, I don't know how you are going to get your mittens washed out here in the cold and snow,"
said the rabbit gentleman.
Ha! I know a way,
said Billy Wagtail, the goat boy.
How?
asked Uncle Wiggily.
I'll get an empty tomato can,
spoke Billy.
I know where there is one, for I was eating the paper off it to get the paste just before you came along.
Goats like to eat paper off tomato cans, you know, because the paper is stuck on with sweet paste, and that is as good to goat children as candy is to you.
I'll go get the tomato can, said Billy, and you can make a fire, Uncle Wiggily.
And then what? asked the rabbit gentleman.
Then we will melt some snow and make some hot water, went on Billy. I have a cake of soap in my pocket that I just bought at the store for my mother. With the hot water in the can and the soap, we can make a suds and wash Muzzo's mittens out here as well as at your bungalow.
So we can, Billy, cried the bunny uncle. You go get the empty tomato tin, and I'll make the fire. You needn't try to wash your soiled mittens in the snow any more, Muzzo, he said to the second lost kitty. We will do it for you, in soapy water, which is better. Soon Uncle Wiggily made a fire. Back came Billy Wagtail with the tomato can. Some snow was put in it, and it was set over the blaze. Soon the snow melted into water, and then when the water was hot, Uncle Wiggily made a soapy suds, as Nurse Jane had done.
Now I can wash my mittens,
cried Muzzo, and she did. And when they were nice and clean, she went home with them, and oh, how glad her mother was to see her.
Never run away again, Muzzo,
said the cat lady.
I won't,
promised the kitten.
But where is Wuzzo?
She is still lost, said Mrs. Purr.
But I will go find her, too, said Uncle Wiggily.
And if the apple pie doesn't go snowballing with the piece of cheese and forget to come back to dinner, I'll tell you next about Uncle Wiggily and the third little kitten. End of chapter 18. Chapter 19 of Uncle Wiggily and Old Mother Hubbard. Uncle Wiggily and the Third Kitten. Uncle Wiggily Longears, the nice old gentleman rabbit, came walking slowly up the front path that led to his hollow stump bungalow. He was limping a little on his red, white, and blue-striped barber pole rheumatism crutch that Nurse Jane Fuzzy Wuzzy, the muskrat lady housekeeper, had gnawed for him out of a cornstalk.
"Well, I'm glad to be home again,"
said the rabbit uncle, sitting down on the front porch to rest a minute, and just then the door in the hollow stump opened, and Nurse Jane, looking out, said,
"Oh, here he is now, Mrs. Purr."
With that, a cat lady came to the door, and she said,
"Oh, Uncle Wiggily, I thought you never would come back. Did you find her?"
"Find who?" asked the rabbit gentleman. "I was not looking for anyone. I have just been down to Lincoln Park to see some squirrels who live in a hollow tree. They are second cousins to Johnny and Billy Bushytail, the squirrels who live in our woods. I had a nice visit with them."
"Then you didn't find Wuzzo, my third little lost kitten, did you?"
asked Mrs. Purr, the cat mother.
"What? Is Wuzzo still lost?" asked the bunny uncle in great surprise. "I thought she had come home."
"No, she hasn't," said Mrs. Purr. "You know you found my other kittens, Fuzzo and Muzzo, for me, but Wuzzo, the third little kitten, is still lost. She has been away all night, and I came over here the first thing this morning to see if you would not kindly go look for her. But you had already left, and I have been waiting here ever since for you to come back."
Yes, I stayed longer with the park squirrels than I meant to," said Uncle Wiggily. "But now I am back I will start off and try to find Wuzzo. It's too bad your 3 little kittens ran away." They had, you know, as I told you in the 2 stories before this one. The 3 little kittens ate cherry pie with their new mittens on, and they soiled their mittens. Then they were so afraid their mother, Mrs. Purr, would scold them that they all ran away. But Mrs. Purr was a kind cat, and would not have scolded at all. And when she found her little kittens were gone, she asked Uncle Wiggily to find them. "And you did find the first 2, Fuzzo and Muzzo," said the cat lady. "So I am sure you can find the 3rd one, Wuzzo." "I hope I can," Uncle Wiggily said. "I remember now I started off to find her, but my rheumatism hurt me, so I had to come back to my bungalow. Then I forgot all about Wuzzo. But I'm all right now, and I'll start off." So away over the fields and through the woods went Uncle Wiggily, looking for the 3rd little lost kitten. When he had found the 2 others, he had helped them wash the pie juice off their mittens, so they were nice and clean. And then the kittens were not afraid to go home. Uncle Wiggily looked all over for the 3rd little kitten, under bushes, up in trees, for cats climb trees, you know. And even behind big rocks Uncle Wiggily looked, but no Wuzzo could he find. At last, when the rabbit gentleman came to a big hollow log that was lying on the ground, he sat down on it to rest, and all of a sudden he heard a voice inside the log speaking, and the voice said, "Pussy cat, where have you been?" "I've been to London to see the Queen," answered another voice. Pussy cat, what did you do there?" "I frightened a little mouse under her chair," came the answer, and this time it was a little pussy-cat kitten speaking, Uncle Wiggily was certain. The old rabbit gentleman looked in one end of the hollow log, and there, surely enough, he saw Wuzzo, the 3rd lost kitten. And besides Wuzzo, Uncle Wiggily saw Neddie Stubtail, the little bear boy, who always slept in a hollow log all winter. But this time Neddie was awake, for it was near spring. "Wuzzo, is that you? What are you doing there?" asked Uncle Wiggily. "Don't you know your poor mother is looking all over for you, and that she has sent me to find you? Why don't you come home?" "I'm afraid to," said Wuzzo, crawling out of the hollow log, and Neddie, the boy bear, also crawled out, saying, "Hello, Uncle Wiggily." "How do you do, Neddie?" spoke the bunny uncle. "How long has Wuzzo been staying with you?" "She just ran in my hollow log," said the little bear chap, "and her tail brushing against my nose tickled me so that I sneezed and awakened from my winter sleep." "Where have you been all night since you ran away, Wuzzo?" asked Uncle Wiggily. "Well," answered the 3rd little kitten, "after Fuzzo, Muzzo, and I soiled our mittens with cherry pie, we all ran away." "Yes, I know that part," spoke the bunny uncle. "It was not right to do, but I have found the other 2 lost kitties. I couldn't find you, though. Why was that?" "Because I met Mother Goose," said Wuzzo, "and she asked me to go to London to see the Queen. She took me through the air on the back of her big gander, and we flew as quickly as you could have gone in your airship." "You went to London to see the Queen?" exclaimed Uncle Wiggily in surprise. Well, what did you do there?" "I frightened a little mouse under her chair, just as Mother Goose wanted me to do," said Wuzzo. "Then the big gander flew with me to these woods and went back to get Mother Goose,
who stayed to talk with the Queen. So here I am, but I don't know the way home."
"Oh, I'll take you home all right," said Uncle Wiggily. "But first we must wash your mittens." "Oh, I did that for her in the log," said Neddie Stubtail, laughing. "With my red tongue I licked off all the sweet cherry pie juice, which I liked very much. So now the mittens are clean." "Good!" cried the bunny uncle. "Then we will go to your mother, Wuzzo. She will be glad to know that you frightened a little mouse under the Queen's chair."
So Uncle Wiggily took the third little kitten home, and thus they were all found. And if the cat on our roof doesn't jump down the chimney and scare the lemon pie so it turns into an apple dumpling, I'll tell you next about Uncle Wiggily and the Jack Horse. End of chapter 19. Chapter 20 of Uncle Wiggily and Old Mother Hubbard. Uncle Wiggily and the Jack Horse.
"Well, where are you going today, Uncle Wiggily?" asked Nurse Jane Fuzzy, the muskrat lady housekeeper, as she saw the rabbit gentleman putting on his tall silk hat and taking his red, white, and blue-striped rheumatism crutch down off the mantel.
"I am going over to see Nanny and Billy Wagtail, the goat children," answered the bunny uncle. "I have not seen them in a long while."
"But they'll be at school," said Nurse Jane.
"I'll wait until they come home, then," said Uncle Wiggily. "And while I'm waiting, I'll talk to Uncle Butter, the nice old gentleman goat."
So off started Uncle Wiggily over the fields and through the woods. Pretty soon he came to the house where the family of wagtail goats lived. They were given that name because they wagged their little short tails so very fast, sometimes up and down, and again sideways.
"Why, how do you do, Uncle Wiggily?" asked Mrs. Wagtail as she opened the door for the rabbit gentleman. "Come and sit down."
"Thank you," he answered. "I called to see Nanny and Billy, but I suppose they are at school."
"Yes, they are studying their lessons."
"Well, I'll come in then and talk to Uncle Butter, for I suppose you are busy."
"Yes, I am, but not too busy to talk to you, Mr. Longears," said the goat lady. "Uncle Butter is away, pasting up some circus posters on the billboard, and I wish he'd come back, for I want him to go to the store for me."
"Couldn't I go?" asked Uncle Wiggily politely. "I have nothing special to do, and I often go to the store for Nurse Jane. I'd like to go for you."
"Very well, you may," said Mrs. Wagtail. "I want for supper some papers off a tomato can, and a few more off a can of corn, and here is a basket to put them in. And you might bring a bit of brown paper, so I can make soup of it."
"I will," said Uncle Wiggily, starting off with the basket on his paw.
Goats, you know, like the papers that come off cans, as the papers have sweet paste on them. And they also like brown grocery paper itself, for it has straw in it, and goats like straw. Of course, goats eat other things besides paper, though. Uncle Wiggily was going carefully along, for there was ice and snow on the ground, and it was slippery, and he did not want to fall. Soon he was at the paper store, where he bought what Mrs. Wagtail wanted. And on the way back to the goat lady's house, something happened to the old rabbit gentleman. As he stepped over a big icicle, he put his foot down on a slippery snowball some little animal chap had left on the path, and all of a sudden, bango! Down went Uncle Wiggily, basket of paper, rheumatism crutch, and all. "Ouch!"
cried the rabbit gentleman. "I fear something is broken," for he heard a cracking sound as he fell. He looked at his paws and legs and felt of his big ears. They seemed all right. Then he looked at the basket of paper. That was crumpled up, but not broken, and the bunny uncle's tall silk hat, while it had a few dents in, was not smashed. "Oh, dear! It's my rheumatism crutch!" cried Uncle Wiggily. "It's broken in two, and how am I ever going to walk without it this slippery day, I don't see. Oh, my goodness me sakes alive, and some Bang Bang tooth powder." Carefully the rabbit gentleman arose, but as he had no red, white, and blue-striped crutch to lean on, he nearly fell again. "I guess I'd better stay sitting down," thought Uncle Wiggily. "Perhaps someone may come along, and I can ask them go get Nurse Jane to gnaw for me another rheumatism crutch out of a cornstalk. I'll wait here until help comes." Uncle Wiggily waited quite a while, but no one passed by. "It will soon be time for Billy and Nanny Wagtail to pass by on their way from school," thought the bunny uncle. "I could send them for another crutch, I suppose." So he waited a little longer, and then, as no one came, he tried to walk with his broken crutch, but he could not. Then Uncle Wiggily cried, "Help! Help! Help!" But still no one came. "Oh, dear," said the rabbit gentleman. "If only Mother Goose would fly past, riding on the back of her gander, she might take me home." He looked up, but Mother Goose was not sweeping cobwebs out of the sky that day, so he did not see her. Then, all of a sudden, as the rabbit gentleman sat there, wondering how he was going to walk on the slippery ice and snow without his crutch to help him, he heard a jolly voice singing, "Ride a jack horse to Banbury Cross, to see an old lady jump on a white horse, with rings on her fingers and bells on her toes. She shall have music wherever she goes." And with that, along through the woods came riding a nice old lady on a rocking horse, and on the side of the rocking horse was painted in red ink the name Jack. "Why, hello, Uncle Wiggily!" cried the nice old lady, shaking her toes and making the bells jingle a pretty tune. "What is the matter with you?" she asked. "Oh, I am in such trouble," replied the bunny uncle. "I fell down on a slippery snowball and broke my crutch. Without it I cannot walk, and I want to take these papers to Mrs. Wagtail, the goat lady, to eat." "Ah, if that is all your trouble, I can soon fix matters," cried the jolly old lady. "Here, get up beside me on my jack horse, and I'll ride you to Mrs. Wagtail's, and then take you home to your hollow stump bungalow." "Oh, will you? How kind!" said Uncle Wiggily. "Thank you. But have you the time?" "Lots of time," laughed the old lady. "It really doesn't matter when I get to Banbury Cross. Come on." Uncle Wiggily got up on the back of the jack horse behind the old lady. She tinkled the rings on her fingers and jingled the bells on her toes, and so of course she'll have music wherever she goes. "Just as the Mother Goose book says," spoke the bunny uncle. "Oh, I'm glad you came along." "So am I," said the nice old lady. Then she took Uncle Wiggily to the Wagtail house, where he left the basket of papers, and next he rode on the jack horse to his bungalow, and after the bunny uncle had thanked the old lady, she herself rode on to Banbury Cross to see another old lady jump on a white horse, and very nicely she did it too, let me tell you.
So, everything came out all right. And in the next chapter, if the apple pie doesn't turn a somersault and crack its crust so the juice runs out, I'll tell you about Uncle Wiggily and the Clock Mouse. End of chapter 20. Chapter 21 of Uncle Wiggily and Old Mother Hubbard. Uncle Wiggily and the Clock Mouse. Uncle Wiggily Longears, the nice old rabbit gentleman, sat in an easy chair in his hollow stump bungalow. He had just eaten a nice lunch, which Nurse Jane Fuzzy Wuzzy, the muskrat lady housekeeper, had put on the table for him, and he was feeling a bit sleepy. "Are you going out this afternoon?" asked Miss Fuzzy Wuzzy as she cleared away the dishes. Well, I hardly know," Uncle Wiggily answered in a sleepy voice. "I may, after I have a little nap." "Your new red, white, and blue striped rheumatism crutch is ready for you," went on Nurse Jane. "I gnawed it for you out of a fine, large cornstalk." Uncle Wiggily had broken his other crutch, if you will kindly remember, when he slipped as he was coming back from the store, where he went for Mrs. Wagtail, the goat lady. And it was so slippery that the rabbit gentleman never would have gotten home, only he rode on a jack horse with the lady, who had rings on her fingers and bells on her toes, as I told you in the story before this one. "Thank you for making me a new crutch, Nurse Jane," spoke the bunny uncle. "If I go out, I'll take it." Then he went to sleep in his easy chair, but he was suddenly awakened by hearing the bungalow clock strike 1. Then, as he sat up and rubbed his eyes with his paws, Uncle Wiggily heard a thumping noise on the hall floor, and a little voice squeaked out, "Ouch! I've hurt my leg! Oh, dear!" "My, I wonder what that can be. It seemed to come out of my clock," spoke Mr. Longears. "I did come out of your clock," said someone. "You did? Who are you, if you please?" asked the bunny uncle, looking all around. "I can't see you." "That's because I'm so small," was the answer. "But here I am right by the table. I can't walk as my leg is hurt." Uncle Wiggily looked and saw a little mouse, who was holding his left hind leg in his right front paw. "Who are you?" asked the bunny uncle. "I am Hickory Dickory Dock, the mouse," was the answer, "and I am a clock mouse." "A clock mouse!" exclaimed Uncle Wiggily in surprise. "I never heard of such a thing." "Oh, don't you remember me? I'm in Mother Goose's book. This is how it goes. Hickory Dickory Dock, the mouse ran up the clock. The clock struck 1, and down he come, Hickory Dickory Dock." "Oh, now I remember you," said Uncle Wiggily. "And so you are a clock mouse." "Yes, I ran up your clock, and then when the clock struck 1, down I had to come. But I ran down so fast that I tripped over the pendulum. The clock reached down its hands and tried to catch me, but it had no eyes in its face to see me, so I slipped anyhow, and I hurt my leg." "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that," said Uncle Wiggily. "Perhaps I can fix it for you. Nurse Jane, bring me some salve for Hickory Dickory Dock, the clock mouse," he called. The muskrat lady brought some salve, and, with a rag, Uncle Wiggily bound up the leg of the clock mouse so it did not hurt so much. "And I'll lend you a piece of my old crutch so you can hobble along on it," said Uncle Wiggily.
"Thank you," spoke Hickory Dickory Dock, the clock mouse. "You have been very kind to me, and some day I hope I may do you a favor. If I can, I will."
"Thank you," Uncle Wiggily said. Then Hickory Dickory Dock limped away, but in a few days he was better, and he could run up more clocks and run down when they struck 1. It was about a week after this that Uncle Wiggily went walking through the woods on his way to see Grandfather Goosey Gander. And just before he reached his friend's house, he met Mother Goose.
"Oh, Uncle Wiggily,"
she said, swinging her cobweb broom up and down,
"I want to thank you for being so kind to Hickory Dickory Dock, the clock mouse."
"It was a pleasure to be kind to him," said Uncle Wiggily. "Is he all better now?"
"Yes, he is all well again," replied Mother Goose. "He is coming to run up and down your clock again soon."
"I'll be glad to see him," said Uncle Wiggily. Then he went to call on Grandpa Goosey, and he told about Hickory Dickory Dock falling down from out the clock. On his way back to his hollow stump bungalow, Uncle Wiggily took a short cut through the woods, and as he was passing along, his paws slipped, and he became all tangled up in a wild grapevine, which was like a lot of ropes all twisted together into hard knots. "Oh, dear!" cried Uncle Wiggily. "I'm caught!" The more he tried to untangle himself, the tighter he was held fast, until it seemed he would never get out. "Oh!" cried the rabbit gentleman. "This is terrible! Will no one come to get me out? Help! Help! Will someone please help me?"
"Yes, I will help you, Uncle Wiggily," answered a kind little squeaking voice.
"Who are you?" asked the rabbit gentleman, moving a piece of the grapevine away from his nose so he could speak plainly.
"I am Hickory Dickory Dock, the clock mouse," was the answer, "and with my sharp teeth I will gnaw the grapevine in many pieces, so you will be free."
"That will be very kind of you," said Uncle Wiggily, who was quite tired out with his struggles to get loose. So Hickory Dickory Dock, with his sharp teeth, gnawed the grapevine, and in a little while Uncle Wiggily was loose and all right again. "Thank you," said the bunny uncle to the clock mouse as he hopped off, and Hickory Dickory Dock went with him, for his leg was all better now. "Thank you very much, nice little clock mouse."
"You did me a favor,"
said Hickory Dickory Dock,
"and now I have done you one, so we are even."
And that's a good way to be in this world. So, if the ink bottle doesn't turn pale when it sees the fountain pen jump in the goldfish bowl and swim, I'll tell you next about Uncle Wiggily and the late scholar. End of chapter 21. Chapter 22 of Uncle Wiggily and Old Mother Hubbard. Uncle Wiggily and the Late Scholar. "Hi-ho!" cried Uncle Wiggily Longears, the nice rabbit gentleman, one morning, as he hopped from bed and went to the window of his hollow stump bungalow to look out. "Hi-ho! It will soon be spring, I hope, for I am tired of winter." Then he went downstairs where Nurse Jane Fuzzy Wuzzy, the muskrat lady housekeeper, had his breakfast ready on the table. Uncle Wiggily ate some cabbage pancakes with carrot maple sugar sprinkled over them, and then as he wiped his whiskers on his red tongue, which he used for a napkin, and as he twinkled his pink nose to see if it was all right, Nurse Jane said,
"Yesterday, Uncle Wiggily, you told me you would like me to make some lettuce cakes today, did you not?"
"I did," answered Uncle Wiggily, sort of slow and solemn-like. "But what is the matter, Nurse Jane? I hope you are not going to tell me that you cannot or will not make those lettuce cakes."
"Oh, I'll make them all right enough, Wiggy," the muskrat lady answered. "Only I have no lettuce. You will have to go to the store for me."
"And right gladly will I go," exclaimed the bunny uncle, speaking like someone in an old-fashioned storybook. "I'll get my automobile out and go at once." Uncle Wiggily had not used his machine often that winter, as there had been so much snow and ice. But now it was getting close to spring and the weather was very nice. There was no snow in the woods and fields, though of course some might fall later. "It will do my auto good to have me ride in it," said the bunny uncle. He blew some hot air in the bologna sausage tires, put some talcum powder on the steering wheel so it would not catch cold, and then, having tickled the whizzicum-wazzicum with a goose feather, away he started for the lettuce store. It did not take him long to get there, and, having bought a nice head of the green stuff, the bunny uncle started back again for his hollow stump bungalow. "Nurse Jane will make some fine lettuce cakes with clover ice cream cones on top," he said to himself as he hurried along in his automobile. He had not gone very far, and he was about halfway home, when from behind a bush he heard the sound of crying. Now, whenever Uncle Wiggily heard anyone crying, he knew someone was in trouble, and as he always tried to help those in trouble, he did it this time. Stopping his automobile, he called, "Who are you, and what is the matter? Perhaps I can help you." Out from behind the bush came a boy, a nice sort of boy, except that he was crying. "Oh, are you Simple Simon?" asked Uncle Wiggily. "And are you crying because you cannot catch a whale in your mother's water pail?" No, I'm not Simple Simon," was the answer of the boy. "Well, you cannot be Jack Horner because you have no pie with you, and you're not Little Boy Blue because I see you wear a red necktie," went on the bunny uncle. "Do you belong to Mother Goose at all?" "Yes," answered the boy, "I do. You must have heard about me. I am Diller-a-Dollar, a 10 o'clock scholar. Why do you come so soon? I used to come at 10 o'clock, but now I'll come at noon. Don't you know me?" "Ha! Why, of course I know you!" cried Uncle Wiggily in his jolly voice, as he put some lollipop oil on the doodle-oodlium of his auto. "But why are you crying?" "Because I'm going to be late at school again," said the boy. "You see, of late I have been late a good many mornings, but this morning I got up early and was sure I would get there before noon." "And so you will if you hurry," Uncle Wiggily said, looking at his watch, that was a cousin to the clock, up which and down which ran Hickory-Dickory-Dock, the mouse. "It isn't anywhere near noon yet," went on the rabbit gentleman. "You can almost get to school on time this morning." "I suppose I could," said the boy, "and I got up early on purpose to do that. But now I have lost my way, and I don't know where the school is. Oh, dear! Boo-hoo! I'll never get to school this week, I fear." "Oh, yes, you will," said Uncle Wiggily, still more kindly. "I'll tell you what to do. Hop up in the automobile here with me, and I'll take you to the school. I know just where it is. Sammy and Susie Littletail, my rabbit friends, and Johnny and Billy Bushytail the squirrels,
as well as Nanny and Billy Wagtail the goats go there. Hop in."
So Diller-a-Dollar, the late scholar, hopped in the auto, and he and Uncle Wiggily started off together.
"You'll not be late this morning," said the bunny uncle. "I'll get you there just about 9 o'clock."
Well, Uncle Wiggily meant to do it, and he might have, only for what happened. First, a hungry dog bit a piece out of one of the bologna sausage tires on the auto wheels, and they had to go slower. Then a hungry cat took another piece, and they had to go still more slowly. A little farther on, the tinkerum-tankerum of the automobile, which drinks gasoline, grew thirsty, and Uncle Wiggily had to give it a glass of lemonade. This took more time. And finally, when the machine went over a bump, the cork came out of the box of talcum powder, and it flew in the face of Uncle Wiggily and the late scholar, and they both sneezed so hard that the auto stopped.
"See, I told you we'd never get to school," sadly said the boy. "Oh, dear! And I thought this time teacher would not laugh and ask me why I came so soon when I was really late." "It's too bad," Uncle Wiggily said. "I did hope I could get you there on time. But wait a minute. Let me think. Ah! I have it! We are close to my bungalow. We'll run there and get in my airship. That goes ever so much faster than my auto, and I'll have you to school in no time."
No sooner said than done. In the airship, the late scholar and Uncle Wiggily reached school just as the 9 o'clock bell was ringing, and so Diller-a-Dollar was on time this time after all. And the teacher said, "Oh, Diller-a-Dollar, my 10 o'clock scholar, you may stand up in line. You used to come in very late, but now you come at 9. So the late scholar was not late after all, thanks to Uncle Wiggily. And if the egg beater doesn't go to sleep in the rice pudding, where it can't get out to go sleigh riding with the potato masher, I'll tell you next about Uncle Wiggily and Baa the black sheep. End of chapter 22. Chapter 23 of Uncle Wiggily and Old Mother Hubbard. Uncle Wiggily and Baa Black Sheep.
"My goodness, but it's cold today!"
exclaimed Uncle Wiggily Longears, the nice rabbit gentleman, as he came down to breakfast in his hollow stump bungalow one morning.
"It is very cold."
"Indeed it is,"
said Nurse Jane Fuzzy Wuzzy, the muskrat lady housekeeper, as she put the hot buttered cabbage cakes on the table.
"If you go out, you had better wear your fur coat."
"I shall," spoke the bunny uncle, "and I probably shall call on Mother Goose. She asked me to stop in the next time I went past."
"What for?"
Nurse Jane wanted to know.
"Oh, little Jack Horner hurt his thumb the last time he pulled a plum out of his Christmas pie, and Mother Goose wanted me to look at it and see if she had better call in Dr. Possum. So I'll stop and have a look."
"Well, give her my love,"
said Nurse Jane, and Uncle Wiggily promised that he would. A little later he started off across the fields and through the woods to the place where Mother Goose lived, not far from his own hollow stump bungalow. Uncle Wiggily had on his fur overcoat, for it was cold. It had been warm the day before, when he had taken Diller-a-Dollar, the 10 o'clock scholar, to school, but now the weather had turned cold again. "Come in," called Mother Goose when Uncle Wiggily had tapped with his paw on her door. "Come in." The bunny uncle went in and looked at the thumb of little Jack Horner, who was playing marbles with Little Boy Blue.
"Does your thumb hurt you much, Jack?" asked Uncle Wiggily.
"Yes, I'm sorry to say it does. I'm not going to pull any more plums out of Christmas pies. I'm going to eat cake instead," said Jack Horner.
"Well, I'll go get Dr. Possum for you," offered Uncle Wiggily. "I think that will be best," he remarked to Mother Goose.
Wrapped in his warm fur overcoat, Uncle Wiggily once more started off over the fields and through the woods. He had not gone very far before he heard a queer sort of crying noise, like "Ba, ba, ba."
"Ha! That sounds like a little lost lamb," said the bunny uncle. "Only there are no little lambs out this time of year. I'll take a look. It may be someone in trouble whom I can help."
Uncle Wiggily looked around the corner of a stone fence, and there he saw a sheep shivering in the cold, for most of his warm, fleecy wool had been sheared off. Oh, how the sheep shivered in the cold!
"Why, what is the matter with you?" asked Uncle Wiggily kindly.
"I am cold," said the sheep shiveringly.
"What makes you cold?" the bunny uncle wanted to know.
"Because they cut off so much of my wool. You know how it is with me, for I am in the Mother Goose book. Listen. Ba, ba, black sheep, have you any wool?" "Yes, sir. Yes, sir. 3 bags full. 1 for the master, 1 for the man, and 1 for the little boy who lives in the lane." That's the way I answered when they asked me if I had any wool," said Baa Baa.
"And what did they do?" asked the bunny uncle.
"Why, they sheared off my fleece, 3 bags of it. I didn't mind them taking the first bagful, for I had plenty, and it was so warm I thought spring was coming. And it doesn't hurt to cut off my fleecy wool any more than it hurts to cut a boy's hair. And after they took the first bagful of wool for the master, they took a second bag for the man. I didn't mind that either, but when they took the third—"
"Then they really did take 3?" asked Uncle Wiggily in surprise.
"Oh, yes, to be sure. Oh, why, it's that way in the book of Mother Goose, you know, and they had to do just as the book says."
"I suppose so," agreed Uncle Wiggily, sadly like.
"Well, after they took the third bag of wool off my back, the weather grew colder, and I began to shiver. Oh, how cold I was, and how I shivered and shook. Of course, if the master and the man and the little boy who lives in the lane had known I was going to shiver so, they would not have taken that last bag of wool. Especially the little boy. He is very kind to me. But now it is done, and it will be a long while before my wool grows out again. And as long as it's cold weather, I will shiver, I suppose," said Baa Baa, the black sheep.
"No, you shall not shiver," cried Uncle Wiggily.
How can you stop me?" asked the Black Sheep. "By wrapping my old fur coat around you," said the Rabbit gentleman. "I have two fur overcoats, a new one and an old one. I am wearing the new one. The old one is at my hollow stump bungalow. You go there and tell Nurse Jane Fuzzy Wuzzy to give it to you. Tell her I said so. Or you can go there and wait for me, as I am going to get Dr. Possum to fix the thumb of little Jack Horner, who sat in a corner eating a Christmas pie." "You are very kind," said Baa Baa. "I'll go to your bungalow and wait there for you." So he did, shaking and shivering all the way, but he soon became warm when he sat by Nurse Jane's fire. And when Uncle Wiggily came back from having sent Dr. Possum to little Jack Horner, the Rabbit gentleman wrapped his old fur coat around Baa Baa, the Black Sheep, who was soon as warm as toast. And Baa Baa wore Uncle Wiggily's old fur coat until warm weather came, when the sheep's wool grew out long again. So everything was all right, you see. And now, having learned the lesson that if you cut your hair too short, you may have to wear a fur cap to stop yourself from getting cold, we will wait for the next story, which, if the pencil box doesn't jump into the inkwell and get a pail of glue to make the lollipop stick fast to the roller skates, will be about Uncle Wiggily and Polly Flinders. End of chapter 23. Chapter 24 of Uncle Wiggily and Old Mother Hubbard. Uncle Wiggily and Polly Flinders. "There!" cried Nurse Jane Fuzzy Wuzzy, the muskrat lady housekeeper, who took care of the hollow stump bungalow for Uncle Wiggily Longears, the Rabbit gentleman. "There! It is all finished at last." "What's all finished?" asked the bunny uncle, who was reading the paper in his easy chair near the fire, for the weather was still cold. "I hope you don't mean you have finished living with me, Nurse Jane, for I would be very lonesome if you were to go away." "Oh, don't worry, I'll not leave you, Wiggy," she said. "What I meant was that I had finished making the new dress for Susie Littletail, the rabbit girl." "Good!" cried the bunny uncle. "A new dress for my little niece Susie. That's fine. If you like, Nurse Jane, I'll take it to her."
"I wish you would," spoke the muskrat lady. "I have not time myself. Just be careful of it. Don't let the bad fox or the skillery-scalery alligator with humps on his ears bite holes in it."
"I won't," promised Uncle Wiggily. So taking the dress, which Nurse Jane had sewed for Susie, over his paw, and with his tall silk hat over his ears, and carrying his red, white, and blue-striped barber-pole rheumatism crutch, off Uncle Wiggily started for the Littletail home. "Susie will surely like her dress," thought the Rabbit gentleman. "It has such pretty colors." For it had, being pink and blue and red and yellow and purple and lavender and strawberry and lemon and orange mountain colors. There may have been other colors in it, but I can think of no more right away. Uncle Wiggily was going along past Old Mother Hubbard's house and past the place where Mother Goose lived when, coming to a place near a big tree, Uncle Wiggily saw another house, and from inside the house came a crying sound. "Oh, dear! Oh, dear! What shall I do?" sobbed a voice. "Aha! More trouble!" cried Uncle Wiggily. "I seem to be finding lots of people in trouble lately. Well, now to see who this is."
Going up to the house and peering in a window, Uncle Wiggily saw a little girl sitting before a fireplace, and this little girl was crying. "Hello!" called Uncle Wiggily in his jolly voice as he opened the window. "What is the matter? Are you Little Bo Peep, and are you crying because you have lost your sheep?" "No, Uncle Wiggily," answered the little girl. "I am crying because I have spoiled my nice new dress, and when my mother comes home and finds it, she will whip me." "Oh, no!" cried the bunny uncle. "Your mother will never do that. But who are you?" "Why, don't you know? I am little Polly Flinders. I sat among the cinders warming my pretty little toes. And her mother came and caught her, and she whipped her little daughter for spoiling her nice new clothes." "That's what it says in the Mother Goose book," said Polly Flinders. "And of course that's what will happen to me. Oh dear, I don't want to be whipped. And I didn't really spoil quite all my nice new clothes. It's only my dress, and some hot ashes got on that." "Well, that isn't so bad," said Uncle Wiggily. "It may be that I can clean it for you." But when he looked at Polly's dress, he saw that it could not be fixed, for, like Pussycat Mole's best petticoat, Polly's dress had been burned through with hot coals, so that it was full of holes. "No, that can't be fixed, I'm sorry to say," said Uncle Wiggily. "Oh, dear!" sobbed Polly Flinders as she sat among the cinders. "What shall I do? I don't want to be whipped by my mother." "And you shall not be," said the bunny uncle. "Not that I think she would whip you, but we will not give her a chance. See here, I have a new dress that I was taking to Susie Littletail. Nurse Jane can easily make my little rabbit niece another. So you take this one and give me your old one, and when your mother comes she will not see the holes in your dress. Only you must tell her what happened, or it would not be fair. Always tell mothers and fathers everything that happens to you." "I will," promised Polly Flinders. She soon took off her old dress and put on the new one intended for Susie, and it just fitted her. "Oh, how lovely!" cried Polly Flinders, looking at her toes. "And now," said Uncle Wiggily, "you must sit no more among the cinders." "I'll not," Polly promised, and she went and sat down in front of the looking-glass, where she could look proudly at the new dress. Not too proudly, you understand, but just proud enough. Polly thanked Uncle Wiggily, who took the old, soiled, and burned dress to Susie's house. When the rabbit girl saw the bunny uncle coming, she ran to meet him, crying, "Oh, did Nurse Jane send you with my new dress?" "She did," answered Uncle Wiggily, "but see what happened to it on the way." And he showed Susie the burned holes and all. "Oh, dear!" cried the little rabbit girl sadly. "Oh, dear!" "Never mind," spoke Uncle Wiggily kindly, and he told all that had happened. It was a sort of adventure, you see. "Oh, I'm glad you gave Polly my dress," said Susie, clapping her paws. "Nurse Jane shall make you another dress," promised Uncle Wiggily, and the muskrat lady did. And when the mother of Polly Flinders came home, she thought the new dress was just fine, and she did not whip her little daughter. In fact, she said she would not have done so anyhow. So that part of the Mother Goose book is wrong. And thus everything came out all right. And if the shaving brush doesn't whitewash the blackboard, so the chalk can't dance on it with the pencil sharpener, I'll tell you next about Uncle Wiggily and the Garden Maid. End of chapter 24. Chapter 25 of Uncle Wiggily and Old Mother Hubbard. Uncle Wiggily and the Garden Maid. "Hey ho hum!" exclaimed Uncle Wiggily Longears, the rabbit gentleman, as he stretched up his twinkling pink nose and reached his paws around his back to scratch an itchy place. "Ho hum! I wonder what will happen to me today."
"Are you going out again?" asked Nurse Jane Fuzzy Wuzzy, the muskrat lady housekeeper. "It seems to me that you go out a great deal, Mr. Longears."
"Well, yes, perhaps I do," admitted the bunny uncle. "But more things happen to me when I go out than when I stay in the house."
"And do you like to have things happen to you?" asked Miss Fuzzy Wuzzy.
"When they are adventures, I do," answered the rabbit gentleman. "So here I go off for an adventure." Off started the nice old bunny uncle, carrying his red, white, and blue-striped barber pole rheumatism crutch, over his shoulder this time, for his pain did not hurt him much, as the sun was shining, so he did not have to limp on the crutch, which Nurse Jane had gnawed for him out of a cornstalk. Uncle Wiggily had not gone very far toward the fields and woods before he heard Nurse Jane calling to him.
"Oh, Wiggy! Wiggy, I say! Wait a moment!"
"Yes, what is it?" asked the rabbit gentleman, turning around and looking over his shoulder. "Have I forgotten anything?"
"No, it was I who forgot," said the muskrat lady housekeeper. "I forgot to tell you to bring me a bottle of perfume. Mine is all gone."
"All right, I'll bring you some," promised Mr. Longears. "It will give me something to do, to go to the perfume store. Perhaps an adventure may happen to me there." Once more he was on his way, and soon he reached the perfume store, kept by a nice buzzing bee lady, who gathered sweet-smelling perfume, as well as honey, from the flowers in summer, and put it carefully away for the winter.
"Some perfume for Nurse Jane, eh?" said the bee lady, as the rabbit gentleman knocked on her hollow tree house. "There you are, Uncle Wiggily." And she gave him a bottle of the nice scent made from a number of flowers.
"My, that smells lovely!" exclaimed Uncle Wiggily, as he pulled out the cork and took a long sniff. "Nurse Jane will surely like that perfume." With the sweet-scented bottle in his paw, the rabbit gentleman started back toward his hollow stump bungalow. He had not gone very far before he saw a nursemaid out in the garden back of a big house. There was a basket in front of the maid with some clothes in it, and stretched across the garden was a line with more clothes on it, flapping in the wind. "Ha!" exclaimed Uncle Wiggily. "I wonder if that garden maid, hanging up the clothes, wouldn't like to smell Nurse Jane's perfume. Nurse Jane will not mind, and perhaps it will be doing that maid a kindness to let her smell something sweet after she has been smelling washing soap suds all morning." So the bunny uncle, who was always doing kind things, hopped over to the garden maid and politely asked, "Wouldn't you like to smell this perfume?" And he held out the bottle he had bought of the bee lady. The garden maid turned around and said in a sad voice, "Thank you, Uncle Wiggily. It is very kind of you, I'm sure, and I would like to smell your perfume, but I can't." "Why not?" asked the bunny uncle. "The cork is out of the bottle. See?" "That may very well be. went on the garden maid.
"But the truth of the matter is that I cannot smell, because a blackbird has nipped off my nose."
Uncle Wiggily, in great surprise, looked, and surely enough, a blackbird had nipped off the nose of the garden maid. "Bless my whiskers!" cried the bunny uncle. "What a thing for a blackbird to do! Nip off your nose! Why did he do such an impolite thing as that?"
"Why, he had to do it, because it's that way in the Mother Goose book," said the maid. "Don't you remember? It goes this way. The king was in the parlor, counting out his money. The queen was in the kitchen, eating bread and honey. The maid was in the garden, hanging out the clothes. Along came a blackbird and nipped off her nose." "That's the way it was," said the garden maid.
"Oh, yes, I remember now," spoke Uncle Wiggily.
"Well, I'm the maid who was in the garden hanging out the clothes," said she, "and as you can see, along came a blackbird and nipped off my nose. That is, you can't see the blackbird, but you can see the place where my nose ought to be."
"Yes," answered Uncle Wiggily, "I can. It's too bad. That blackbird ought to have his feathers ruffled."
"Oh, he didn't mean to be bad," said the garden maid. "He had to do as it says in the book, and he had to nip off my nose. So that's why I can't smell Nurse Jane's nice perfume."
Uncle Wiggily thought for a minute. Then he said, "Just you wait here. I think I can fix it so you can smell as well as ever." Then the bunny uncle hurried off through the woods until he found Jimmy Caw Caw, the big black crow boy. "Jimmy," said the bunny uncle, "will you fly off, find the blackbird, and ask him to give back the garden maid's nose so she can smell perfume?" "I will," said Jimmy Caw Caw very politely. "I certainly will." Away he flew, and after a while, in the deep, dark part of the woods, he found the blackbird sitting on a tree. "Please give me back the garden maid's nose," said Jimmy politely.
"Certainly,"
answered the blackbird also politely.
"I only took it off in fun. Here it is back. I'm sorry I bothered the garden maid, but I had to, as it's that way in the Mother Goose book."
Off to Uncle Wiggily flew Jimmy, the crow boy, with the young lady's nose, and soon Dr. Possum had fastened it back on the garden maid's face as good as ever. "Now you can smell the perfume," said Uncle Wiggily, and when he held up the bottle the maid said,
"Oh, what a lovely smell!"
So the bunny uncle left a little perfume in a bottle for the garden maid, and then she went on hanging up the clothes, and she felt very happy because she had a nose. So you see how kind Uncle Wiggily and Jimmy were, and Nurse Jane, too, liked the perfume very much. So if the little girl's roller skates don't run over the pussy's tail and ruffle it all up so she can't go to the moving picture party, I'll tell you next of Uncle Wiggily and the King. End of chapter 25. Chapter 26 of Uncle Wiggily and Old Mother Hubbard. Uncle Wiggily, that's me, and the King. Uncle Wiggily Longears, the nice old rabbit gentleman, was sitting in an easy chair in his hollow stump bungalow one day, looking out of the window at the blue sky, and he was feeling quite happy. And why should he not be happy? Nurse Jane Fuzzy Wuzzy, his muskrat lady housekeeper, had just given him a nice breakfast of cabbage pancakes, with carrot maple sugar tied in a bow knot in the middle, and Uncle Wiggily had eaten 9. 9 cakes, I mean, not 9 bows. "And now," said the bunny uncle to himself, "I think I shall go out and take a walk. Perhaps I may have an adventure. Do you want any perfume or anything like that from the store?" asked Mr. Longears of Miss Fuzzy Wuzzy.
"No, thank you, I think not,"
answered the muskrat lady.
"Just bring yourself home, and that will be all."
"Oh, I'll do that all right," promised the bunny gentleman. So away he hopped, over the fields and through the woods, humming to himself a little song which went something like this: "I'm feeling happy now and gay, and why shouldn't I, this lovely day? 'Tis time enough to be quite sad, when wind and rain make weather bad. But even then, one ought to try to think that soon it will be dry. So then, no matter what the weather, smile as though tickled by a feather." Uncle Wiggily felt happier than ever when he had sung this song, but as he went along a little further, he came all at once to a very nice house indeed, out of which floated the sound of a sad voice. Uncle Wiggily was surprised to hear this, for the house was such a nice one that it seemed no one ought to be unhappy who lived there. The house was made of gold and silver, with diamond windows, and the chimney was made of a red ruby stone, which, as everyone knows, is very expensive. But with all that, the sad voice came sailing out of one of the opened diamond windows, and the voice said, "Oh dear, oh dear, it's gone! I can't find it. I dropped it and it rolled down a crack in the floor. Now I'll never get it again. Oh dear!" "Well, that sounds like someone in trouble," said the bunny uncle. "I must see if I cannot help them." For Uncle Wiggily helped real folk who lived in fine houses, as well as woodland animals who lived in hollow trees. Uncle Wiggily hopped up to the open diamond window of the gold and silver house with the red ruby chimney, and, poking his nose inside, the rabbit gentleman asked, "Is there someone here in trouble whom I may have the pleasure of helping?" "Yes," answered a voice, "I'm here, and I'm surely in trouble." "Who are you, and what is the trouble, if I may ask?" politely went on Uncle Wiggily. "I am the king," was the answer. "This is my palace, but, with all that, I am in trouble. Come in." In hopped Uncle Wiggily, and there, surely enough, was the king, but he was in the kitchen, down on his hands and knees, looking with one eye through a crack in the floor, which is something kings hardly ever do. "It's down there," he said, "and I can't get it. I'm too fat to go through the crack." "What's down there?" Uncle Wiggily wanted to know. "My money," answered the king. "You may have heard about me." And he recited this little verse: "The king was in the kitchen, counting out his money. The queen was in the parlor, eating bread and honey. The maid was in the garden, hanging out the clothes. Along came a blackbird who nipped off her nose." The fat man got up off the kitchen floor. "I'm the king," he said, taking up his gold and diamond crown from a kitchen chair, where he had put it as he kneeled down, so it would not fall off and be dented. "From Mother Goose, you know, don't you?" "Yes, I know," answered Uncle Wiggily.
I dare say you'll find the Queen in the parlor eating bread and honey," went on the king. "At least I saw her start for there with a plate, knife, and fork as I was coming here. And, no doubt, the maid is in the garden where she'll pretty soon have her nose nipped off by a blackbird." "That part happened yesterday," said Uncle Wiggily. "I was there just after it happened, and I got Jimmy Caw Caw, the crow boy, to fly after the blackbird and bring back the maid's nose. She is as well as ever now and can smell all kinds of perfume." "Good!" cried the fat king. "You were very kind to help her. I only wish you could help me. But I don't see how you can. My money, which I was counting, fell out of my hands and dropped down a crack in the floor. I can see it lying down there in the dirt, but I can't get at it unless I move to one side my gold and silver palace, and I don't want to do that. I don't suppose you can move a palace, can you?" And he looked askingly at Uncle Wiggily. "No, I can't do that," said the bunny uncle. "But still I think I can get your money without moving the palace." "How?" asked the king. "Why, I can go outside," said Mr. Longears, "and with my strong paws, which are just made for digging, I can burrow, or dig, a place through the dirt under your palace house, crawl in and get what you dropped." "Oh, please do!" cried the king. So Uncle Wiggily did. Down under the cellar wall of the palace, through the dirt, dug the bunny gentleman with his strong paws. Pretty soon he was right under the kitchen, and there, just where they had dropped through the crack, were the king's gold and silver pennies and other pieces of money. Uncle Wiggily picked them up, put them in his pocket, and crawled out again. "There you are, King," he said. "You have your money back." "Oh, thank you ever so much," cried the king. "I'll have the cook give you some carrots." And he did, before he went on counting his money in the kitchen. And this time he stuffed a dish rag in the crack so no more pennies would fall through. "Well, Uncle Wiggily, where are you going now?" asked the king as he saw the bunny gentleman hopping away with the bunch of carrots. "I hardly know that myself," answered the rabbit. "I want to have more adventures, either with the friends of Old Mother Hubbard and Mother Goose, or with some of the animal or birds that live in the woods." "I think some adventures with birds would be exciting," spoke the king. "This blackbird who nipped off the maid's nose was a lively sort of chap." "He was indeed," agreed the bunny gentleman. "I think I should like some adventures with my feathered friends who fly in the air. When I come back, I'll tell you about them, Mr. King." "Please do," begged the gentleman with the gold and diamond crown. And so, as long as the rabbit wishes it, and if the condensed milk doesn't jump out of the molasses jug and scare the coffee pot so that it drinks tea, I shall make the next book Uncle Wiggily and the Birds, and I hope you will like it. End of